In northern Michigan, there's a river that runs cold, quiet, and 74 miles, cutting between the Upper Peninsula and Ontario. To most, it looks like just another stretch of northern water winding past pines and weathered docks, maybe a fishing boat or two. But beneath the surface, this river is doing serious work. Each year, over 80 million tons of cargo, iron ore, coal, limestone, move through the St. Mary's River. On paper, it's worth $5 to $6 billion, but that's just the raw material. But the real value lies downstream in the steel mills and the factories that depend on it, fueling an economy worth hundreds of billions of dollars, on par with entire countries like Ireland or Norway. At the north end, you'll find the Soo Locks, the busiest in the world by tonnage. 90% of the world's iron ore passes through them, and if those locks ever shut down, even for a few months, the economic hit could top $1 trillion. But this river carries more than steel and stone, it carries stories. Ancient trade routes, British forts, industrial ghosts, and a forgotten governor's island retreat. We've paddled it before, camped along its banks, drifted through its quiet backwaters, but this time, we're here to listen, to follow the current and see what the river has to say. So we're heading north to a little town called Detour, Michigan, to launch Sea Raven and take a trip up the St. Mary's River and back through time. So we can head down to Detour Passage and capture, I guess, the Lighthouse and kind of talk about that, and then head to Fort Drummond. So we start here at the mouth of the St. Mary's River at the Detour Lighthouse on Detour Shoal, a pretty dangerous place for ships. Over there is Drummond Island, out there is Lake Huron, and I think it's 74 miles that way is the Soo Locks. The Detour Reef Lighthouse stands watch over a critical crossroads in the Great Lakes. This light marks the mouth of the St. Mary's River, the only natural waterway connecting Lake Huron to Lake Superior. It was originally built onshore in 1847. The light was moved out to Detour Reef in 1931, where it could better guide the growing freighter traffic through its narrow and treacherous channel. It's not just a lighthouse, it's a gatekeeper to the heart of Great Lakes shipping.
Tucked into the wooded hills lies the quiet remains of Fort Drummond, a British outpost built during the War of 1812. When the British lost Fort Mackinac in 1815, they weren't ready to give up control of the upper Great Lakes, so they packed up, crossed the ice, and built a new fort here on what they believed was British soil. Turns out it wasn't. After the boundary dispute was settled in 1822, Drummond Island was officially deemed American territory. But the Brits, they stayed for 6 years. Finally, like a reluctant adult child, the British packed up again and sailed away, leaving behind the only known British fort ever constructed on American soil after the War of 1812 had technically ended. Today, all that remains are the stone ruins and the earthworks.
Just south of the Drummond Island Ferry, we came upon a working history lesson. That's the Sagena, a 622-foot freighter born steam-powered over 70 years ago in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and she didn't switch to diesel until 2007. Just beyond her, carved into the stone of Drummond Island, is a quarry that's been shaping the Great Lakes for 100 years. It started in the 1920s when T.L. de Rocher figured out that Engadine dolomite, dense, blocky, and hard as coffin nails, was perfect for piers, breakwaters, and building the Soo Locks themselves. By the 1940s, the place was running 24/7, shipping out millions of tons a year to feed the steel mills of the Midwest. From British soldiers burning it for lime to Bethlehem Steel hauling it by the boatload, this quarry has seen empires rise, war industries boom, and ships like the Saginaw keep the rhythm of the river alive. So yeah, it looks peaceful, but this waterway has got work in its bones. Viking.
Viking people?
If you want to come down, we'd love to talk to you.
You know, if you want to go in the boat basin here, that's ours, so you can tie off in there a second if you'd like.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
And we own the conventional house next door.
Came around the corner and or just around, and you don't see it until you're on it.
Yeah, no, it comes with, we have a marine scanner on because we're boat nerds and watch the freighters.
Sure,
And
right.
We've heard lots of comments on the radio where people are traveling together, and it's like, what is that?
What?
We're not selling anything either, so you know.
That's Mark. He owns this iron giant known as the John W. Boardman, later the Louis G. Heramman, and now back to her birth name. Back in 1923, she was the first ship specifically designed to haul cement on the Great Lakes.
And they renamed the boat Louis G. Heramman after their banker in Buffalo. So that's why the Heramman name boards are up there on the pilot.
For decades, she ran the inland seas, delivering from Alpena to anywhere that needed concrete, until she wound up in a scrapyard, stripped and headed for oblivion. And that's when Mark and his wife Jill stepped in. They bought her from a scrapyard, just the bow, the wheelhouse, and the forward cabins, and then somehow pulled off the logistical nightmare of towing her by barge down the St. Mary's River and unloading her onto their land outside of Detour village. No easy feat. According to the neighbors, watching that happen was like seeing a steel whale get beached on purpose. Since then, Mark and Jill have poured 20 years of weekends, vacation days, sweat, and love into transforming her into a 5,000 square foot cottage. But what they've really built is something rarer, an accidental museum.
Yeah.
So we got a deal.
You
know,
did?
it's
And the contractor kept his word, even though he didn't want to after a while.
Even though they lost money at it, they
Former crew members stop by, curious boat nerds make pilgrimages, and all the while this couple keeps scraping paint and swapping stories, preserving a slice of Great Lakes grit with nothing but determination and a sense of duty. They didn't set out to become curators of maritime history, but that's the thing about passion projects. They sneak up on you, and in the end, that's just how Great Lakes people roll. And when you're cruising down the St. Mary's River thinking about lunch and suddenly out of the trees, bam! A freighter that looks like it took a wrong turn on its way to Alpena? Well, that's the story. This is the John Sherwin, an 806-foot relic of Great Lakes shipping laid up alongside the St. Mary's River. Built in 1958, she was a brute in her day, hauling iron ore across the Great Lakes. But time caught up. The industry shifted towards self-unloaders, faster turnaround times, smaller crews, more profits. The Sherwin couldn't keep pace. Plans were floated to modernize her, first in the early 2000s, but then the 2002 recession hit, and the project stalled. Another attempt came in the late 2000s, but by then her steam engines were considered ancient. It seems plans to upgrade both were floated, but the 2009 financial crisis sank those plans too. Since then, silence. As we troll alongside in our little boat, she looms above us, rusted but proud. A ghost of Great Lakes commerce tied to the dock by bad timing and changing tides. She's not just a laid-up freighter, she's a time capsule waiting for a future that may never come. We've made it to Lime Island, and those of you that have watched our video about Lime Island a few years ago, the docks were all destroyed because of the high water, but looks like they got all new docking in. It's one of the few places that you can usually get a reservation to stay at a campsite or a cabin, because you can't drive here with a car, you have to take a boat.
Lime Island doesn't make the headlines, but it probably should. Tucked into the St. Mary's River, it's just a bump of land to passing freighters. But this place has lived a dozen lives. Long before industry, the Anishinaabe used this land seasonally, fishing, trading, even hosting sporting events like lacrosse. It was a gathering point, a cultural stopover on the Inland Water Highway. So we used to bring our kids here and we would stay in the red cabin right there. It was a blast. A lot of great memories.
Then came steam. By the early 1900s, Lime Island transformed into a coal refueling station for Great Lakes freighters. Men shoveled tons of coal into the bellies of ships bound for the Soo. It was hard work, dirty work, but it kept the boats and the economy moving. A village grew up here, bunkhouses, staff houses, a school, even a post office.
But coal didn't last, so Lime Island adapted again. When steam gave way to diesel, the island converted into a fuel oil depot. Same job, new fuel. It stayed relevant longer than most. A quiet workhorse behind the scenes of Great Lakes shipping.
Eventually, the traffic dried up, the workers left, the docks rotted, and the forest began to take it all back. But today, there's a new chapter. Lime Island is now a Michigan State recreation area, protected, preserved, and slowly being redeveloped for hikers, boaters, and curious souls like us. You can walk past rusted equipment, sleep in the old bunkhouse, and watch deer wander trails where coal carts once rolled.
It's a rare place, a landscape that remembers everything.
We got some traffic here in the downbound channel right now. As you're cruising the St. Mary's River, there's a section that will strike you as very straight, and you found the rock cut. Officially, it's the West Nebish Channel. Unofficially, it's one of the Great Lakes' quiet engineering legends, often overlooked, but no less impressive than the Soo Locks. Built at the tail end of the 1800s, the rock cut was the answer to a growing problem. Freighters were getting bigger, but the river wasn't. The natural channel on the other side of the island is twisty, narrow, and full of rocky hazards. Ships couldn't pass each other, and accidents started choking the river for days at a time. So the Army Corps of Engineers made a decision, blasting through 1.6 miles of solid rock to reroute the river itself. And this wasn't some weekend landscaping project. We're talking 1890s dynamite, hand drills, and steam-powered dredges. 1.3 million cubic yards of sandstone, granite, and pure stubbornness removed one powder charge at a time. Men worked through brutal winters and black fly summers, carving a man-made canyon deep enough to let 1,000-footers glide through like butter. It opened in 1902 and has been a vital artery ever since. It's not flashy, there's no visitor center, but it's the reason ore boats can safely pass Nebish Island, dodging the bends and the shallows that used to ground ships and delay commerce. Today, as you cruise through it, the cut is quiet, just the sound of engines echoing off rock walls. But underneath the calm, over a century of labor, grit, and brilliant engineering. And like much of the Great Lakes, if you blink, you might just miss the miracle. So that's the Nebish Island Ferry. And then also here at the north end, at the other Nebish Island Ferry dock, is this unassuming building right here, which looks like a little bit of a tower, maybe an observation post. And that is Coast Guard Lookout number 4. And the purpose of these lookouts on the St. Mary's River were for Coast Guardsmen to man these towers and to keep watch for ships going upbound. And when there was traffic coming upbound, they would phone to the Army Corps of Engineers. There was a telephone cable that ran here, and they would phone to the Army Corps of Engineers and say, hey, we have an upbound freighter headed your way. And each station would relay that information, so they knew where the traffic was. And this was before they have those traffic apps that boat nerds have on their phone. There used to be 7 of those, but the rest, I believe it was in the 60s, were destroyed or they were burned down either by accident or by vandals. And this is the last one that's left. And there's an effort right now underway to save this station. And if you have a chance, we'll put it in the description or throw a picture of the QR code up on the screen so you can make a donation to help save Lookout number 4. And hey, Poppin', that's the old Nebish Island Ferry.
Oh, no kidding.
I guess a private individual owns it now.
You don't have a ferry dock yet, Chuck.
Because I need another hobby.
Save your toilet paper rolls, your dryer lint, and the dryer sheets. roll them up, and then you've got a great fire starter. Success!
On the wooded edge of Sugar Island, just downriver from Sault Ste. Marie, there's a crumbling compound that once belonged to a man who never quite fit the mold, even when he was making history.
This is the summer home of Chase Salmon Osborne, journalist, explorer, iron prospector, and Michigan's only governor from the Upper Peninsula. He served just one term back in 1911, but he made a career, a legend, out of doing things his own way.
Osborne bought this patch of forest in the 1920s, not for show, but for solitude. He built 2 log cabins, one for living and one for working, on a small bluff overlooking the river. But the centerpiece, a poured concrete, fireproof library. He called it the Godown, a strange name for what was, in essence, a concrete bunker of ideas. This wasn't a retreat in the cozy sense, it was a laboratory of thought, a place where Osborne could read, write, and rant uninterrupted.
Osborne was a complicated man. He championed conservation, clashed with party bosses, explored the Amazon, and wrestled with mortality in his later writings. He did pass in 1949.
Today, the cabins are weathered ruins. The Godown still stands with faded concrete walls. But if you stand still long enough, you might feel it. The flicker of a restless mind still pacing between the trees. So as we get up to the northern end of the St. Mary's River, we have the Sugar Island Ferry that has a regularly scheduled service from the mainland over to Sugar Island. And then we make our bend over to Sault Ste. Marie and the Soo Locks. And these ferries haul a lot of cars in a year. There's really 3, I think, that's the Eastern UP Transportation Authority. There's Sugar Island, Nevish Island, and Drummond Island. Then we have the Coast Guard over here. They got the helo out, and kind of looks like they're training to lift the basket from a boat. You can see it dropping down. Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan doesn't try to put on a show. It doesn't need to. This is Michigan's oldest city, founded by the French in 1668. But the Anishinaabe were here long before that, calling it Badawitagon, the place of the rapids. Back then, it was one town. No Michigan, no Ontario, just a single community built around the river. Then came borders. The U.S. took one half and Canada kept the other. Same name, same soul, now split by politics and the current. But the heart of this place still beats on both sides. You see it in the weathered docks, the quiet streets and riverfront, and the way the river ties the past and the present, without asking for permission. Just upriver from downtown Sault Ste. Marie, tucked right up against the St. Mary's River, sat the original Fort Brady, a quiet military post with a vital mission: protect the Soo Locks. From the late 1800s through World War II, soldiers were stationed here in Riverside Barracks, training and watching, because if those locks ever went down, the steel mills and the war machine grinding below the Great Lakes would come to a halt. And the threat was real: submarines, saboteurs, anything that could slip in with the current. And so, Fort Brady stood guard. But as the years rolled on, the camp was moved from the riverbank up to the hill overlooking town. There it operated into the post-war years, before being decommissioned entirely. That hilltop site, it didn't stay empty for long. It became home to Lake Superior State University, where classrooms now stand where soldiers once drilled. Now the barracks are campus buildings. The marching has stopped, but the mission, protecting what matters, echoes here still, carried forward in quieter ways. Our last stop before takeout was the Soo Locks, and for those unfamiliar, there are two sets. The big ones, the celebrities of the system, are on the American side. That's where 500,000 people a year gather to watch 1,000-foot freighters glide in like floating skyscrapers, locking through with just feet to spare. Then there's the quieter set over on the Canadian side. That's where most recreational boats, like ours, pass through, heading either up to Lake Superior or downriver toward Lake Huron. Most of the time, when we need to lock through, the big freighters are stacked up on the US side, waiting their turn in the big chambers. So we slip over to Canada's lock. Easy in, easy out. That's the way it's always gone. Until today.
The American side's going to let us lock through. So that's pretty exciting.
We've never done the American.
This is it. The Soo Locks, one of the greatest engineering feats in the Great Lakes, and today we're locking through in a boat that feels like a bathtub compared to the freighters that usually pass through here. These gates handle over 80 million tons of cargo every year: steel, grain, iron ore, everything that keeps America running. In fact, these are the busiest locks in the entire world. They lift and lower ships the size of floating steel giants, and now they're lifting us. It's humbling, it's a little surreal, and honestly, it's absolutely incredible. Because, let's be honest, when you reach our age, firsts don't come around all that often, but today, we bagged a brand new one.
And that's the St. Mary's River. I'm Chuck.
I'm Poppins.
The channel's Restless Viking. Thanks for coming along.